son is racing.
Welcome, race fans, to another episode of the Rubbin' Is Racing Daily Fantasy NASCAR Show. This week we head to Phoenix for the second leg of NASCAR Goes West. It's the TicketGuardian 500. We've got another new race package this week, lots of horsepower and lots of downforce. Should mean high speed in the turns and plenty of good racing. Hell, we've already had fisticuffs on pit road as Michael McDowell went after Suarez and tried to put him in a headlock. Suarez then dumped Michael McDowell to the ground. Then Michael McDowell's crew chief put Suarez on the hood of a car. I don't know about you, Liehr, but that took me back to my bouncing days. I may have put a guy or two on the hood of a car and held him down for a little while. How's it going, brother? It's good to have you with us this week.
It's good to be back, bro. Yeah, I've seen a couple of those, and if you haven't met Big Poppa, he is not a small man by any means. So, it's definitely, I've seen that a time or two, but man, what a way to start off the weekend, huh?
Stages this week in Phoenix are going to be at lap 75, lap 150, and then they'll go the final 162 laps all the way to the finish.
Well, interesting fact here at Phoenix is even though with this new rules package, we can't really rely on historical statistical data for much information, but it is quite interesting, and it may have a correlation with this weekend and it may not. But in the last six races here at Phoenix, the spring race, which is this weekend, the winner has come from the 10th or higher position. And in the last three races in the fall race, the winner has come from the top 10. So will it be a winner this weekend outside the top 10? I'm leaning towards yes.
Wow, a winner outside the top 10. Weather should be sunny with temps in the low 70s when we go racing at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Fox. It's on the main network again this week. We've got some really cool news for the Rubbin' Is Racing Daily Fantasy NASCAR Show. You can now support the show at rubbinisracingdfs@gmail.com on PayPal. If you like what we do and you want to support the show or throw a tip our way, if our advice helps you hit a nice jackpot and you want to tip out the show runners, feel free to. What we're trying to do, guys, is we're trying to raise some money for the show so we can update our equipment, and our end goal is to put a sponsorship on a NASCAR car at somewhere and invite one of you guys to join us with hot passes at Kansas Speedway. Now, that's an ultimate goal, and we're quite a ways away from that. But if you guys support the show enough, we can make that happen this year, hopefully. So, fingers crossed. And once again, if you want to support the show, it's rubbinisracingdfs@gmail.com on PayPal. All right, Liehr, we are filming before the final two practices because you have to go see a friend's band tomorrow night. With that said, we want all of our viewers to adjust accordingly to the practices. I will be available, and I think Liehr will be available a little bit to bat around some ideas with you guys on the YouTube page if you want, and if practice causes us to make some adjustments. But with that said, Liehr, I think it's time to burn some rubber. Do the honors, buddy.
Hey, man. Priorities in life, right?
Right.
Got to have some fun on the weekends. But, yeah, man, looking forward to it. I always love watching the Phoenix race. It's always an interesting race, and it's going to be interesting to see how this rules package plays out this weekend. Definitely have some interesting qualifiers this weekend that happened today. So, but I'm looking forward to it, brother, and let's get it on, baby. Burning rubber desert racing style, baby!
Nice. The desert and the tumbleweeds. All right, Liehr. Without really having the final two practices, burning rubber is going to be a little interesting this week. I'm not going to surprise anybody with my burning rubber pick, I don't think. Liehr, who do you have to burn some rubber this week?
Well, I'm going to pull out a old one from the book of Poppa, but I'm going to give the folks a little bit of a twofer here for this weekend. My first one that I'm going to be going with is guys had a fantastic start to the season. I think he's definitely surprised a lot of people, especially too after making the change from one team to another. But I'm going to be going with Kurt Busch in the number 1 Chip Ganassi vehicle this weekend. Interesting fact about Kurt is he's starting from that 16th position. And on top of that, though, he comes with a good salary price point again this weekend, still under that $9,000 Mendoza line, but $8,800 for Kurt Busch. But the best part about it is Kurt Busch actually has some pretty decent stats here at Phoenix. He's got 32 starts. He's got 1 win under his belt, 7 top 5s, 18 top 10s. So more than 50% of the time, kids, he finishes in the top 10 here at Phoenix. And, top 20s doesn't really vote much in my book, but he's got 21 top 20s and has led 809 laps, which puts him in the top tier echelon of people to lead laps here at ISM Raceway. So, but definitely going to be going with some Kurt Busch this weekend. I feel that team's got a lot of momentum going into the weekend. Of course, they haven't gotten that win, but Kurt Busch has been, in a lot of lineups, been a must-own play the last handful of weeks. And again, he got a, not a great starting position by their eyes, but from a DFS and fantasy perspective, it's a great starting position for him, especially last week after starting 28th. But I'm definitely going to have some exposure on Kurt Busch this weekend, starting from that 16th position. But the other twofer part of this is I'm going to be going also with his teammate, and that's number 42, and that's Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson doesn't have, the best of stats here. But he does have 10 races under his belt here at Phoenix. He's got 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s, and 8 top 20s. He hasn't been a huge dominator here. He's only got 69 laps led, but he went out and they waited way too long today to get out there. And that was part of the reason, too, with the fight between McDowell and Suarez. But they just waited way too long, and he's going to end up starting from the 31st position. So, I think that Kyle Larson is going to be a free square must-own play this weekend. His ownership percentage is going to be sky high through the roof. But I'm sorry, but there is no way that Kyle Larson does not finish in the top 15. And I know with his $9,900 salary price point this weekend, it kind of takes a lot from your $50K salary. But if it's a must-own guy, it's a must-own guy. So you're going to have to figure out how to get him in there somehow. But I'm going to have a pretty large exposure on Kyle Larson this weekend. And I think Chip Ganassi is going to take you in the right direction this weekend, brother. How about you?
I actually like both the Chip Ganassi cars. I don't have either one of them to be like my burning rubber pick. I had Kyle Larson being the best of the place differential guys, and I had Kurt Busch being the best of what I considered the tweeners, which is a group of him, Almirola, Jimmy, right? Like those guys that are higher salaried, but right at that edge in the teens, starting the teens. They're starting 14th, 15th, and 16th, those 3 guys. I like all of them. I don't know how much you can put together Kurt Busch and Larson and roll with an actual dominator. But it sounds to me like your theory is that one of these middle pack guys is actually going to win the race and be the dominator. Is that where you're leaning this week?
Well, my game play out as far as strategy and everything this weekend is you're going to talk about a guy that I really like too this weekend. He obviously has shown the speed. I think they're going to be those guys that are going to be up front. I think that Kurt Busch is definitely one of those guys that, and they've shown that even last week. He led what was it, 23 laps, and even finished in the top 5 after starting from that 20th position. So definitely a must-own guy last weekend. Now, obviously, he doesn't have the place differential this weekend, but I think that team can get up there towards the front and have that combination of place differential and laps led and fastest laps points. So that's why I do like both him and Kyle Larson a lot. But I will have my quote unquote, I think, dominator, which is a gentleman that you're going to be talking about here in a little bit. But I'm going to be comboing a lot of those guys this weekend.
Fair enough. Well, so without further ado, when I told you my pick, stole your burner rubber pick. I'm going with Ryan Blaney this weekend. He's looked fast all season. He just hasn't had the results. He's only $8,200, and he beat the field by 0.2 in the final round of qualifying. He's over a mile an hour faster than the rest of the field. Last week, he was the fastest car on the track, but he got pinned down multiple laps because of a bad penalty in the pits. He should be extremely high owned with his price at only $8,200. But I think you're going to want to roster him. I think there's going to be a split this week between him and Chase Elliott starting second at $9,300. And that's where a lot of the ownership is going to go. What you need to garner out of that is that means that the top tier of drivers this week is going to be incredibly underowned. And unlike what we've seen in past, where you have the nice 20+% for all of the elite talent in NASCAR. Liehr, before I get into the other potential dominators, because I don't want to just spew out a bunch of guys, what are your thoughts on Blaney and possibly a little Chase Elliott there?
For one, I mean, the guy is this weekend so far has been just absolutely dominant here at Phoenix. Like you said already, he's been the fastest in practice and he was fastest in qualifying. And he was, with this package to be at 1 mile an hour over everybody else, that shows a lot to me. So I think there's going to be pretty significant ownership on Blaney this weekend. Now, historically, has Blaney dominated ISM Raceway? No, not by any means. He's started there 6 times. He only has 2 top 10s and has not led hardly any laps. He's only led 14 laps. So, has he had a huge dominant performance here at ISM? No, he hasn't. But I think he's got the equipment this weekend to do it. And any other team, as far as Team Penske, 2 out of the 3 drivers already have wins. We're only in the 4th race of the season so far. So, these guys have already gotten something figured out over the rest of the field. And maybe it's just Ryan Blaney's turn this weekend. I don't know. But I definitely am going to have exposure on Ryan Blaney. And I do like Chase Elliott as well. I don't think that Chase Elliott will obviously carry the ownership that Ryan Blaney will carry. But I do think that there's something too in the waters when it comes to Hendrick Motorsports this weekend, because 3 out of the 4 guys are starting in the top 10. And that's Chase Elliott starting second. Then you've got Alex Bowman and Billy Byron starting in the top 10, with Jimmy Johnson starting 15th. So there's something there with these guys. And I don't know if you remember, but remember when Alex Bowman was filling in for Dale Earnhardt Jr. at Phoenix, and he led all those laps a couple of years ago? Yep. I just think that the person that starts on the pole here has a pretty good, significant advantage over the rest of the field to at least start the race. Obviously strategy and everything else has got to play out, and there's going to be other circumstances that are going to come into fruition. But I just think Blaney's got a good opportunity this weekend to take advantage of what has been basically given to him this weekend by qualifying first. So, but don't overlook those 100 guys either. I'm not necessarily saying, okay, make sure you go out and you play a lot of Alex Bowman and a lot of Billy Byron, but I do like the Chase Elliott aspect of that.
I completely agree. Other potential dominators this week, we've got Denny Hamlin at $9K. He starts 3rd. He had a hole-in-one yesterday on the golf course. So has he used up his luck, or is he on a heater? We'll have to see. You've got Kyle Rowdy Busch at $12,200 starting 4th. He's led the most laps here in the last 4 races and is second all-time to Harvick, who starts 8th. He's $12,800 and hasn't shown speed thus far, but I like that starting 8th position. We've seen Harvick dominate from the 8th position before. Both have a win here and 3 top 5s in the last 4 races, but Rowdy's 2 total wins here are piddly compared to Harvick's 9. So if you're going off track history, you're going to be rostering Harvick at $12,800. Other guys that could possibly dominate: Kez starting 5th at $11,600. Truex is an outside shot starting 9th. He's $10,900. And then we've got Joey Bag of Donuts starting 12th, and it's $10,300. The real problem that I've seen with all these guys is because of their prices and who you're wanting to play place differential-wise, you're only going to be able to really afford one of them if you go with a place differential strategy. And that could be problematic. For example, if Blaney leads a chunk of laps and then Harvick comes to take it over and he leads a chunk of laps, the points can get there for these guys. It's really iffy on whether or not what strategy you're going to want to go with this week. I think the practices tomorrow are going to help define what direction we want to go in. Liehr, your thoughts on some of those guys?
Yeah, for sure, brother. I mean, there's no denying the fact that Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch have owned Phoenix. This has just been their racetrack, and it's pretty crazy to say that we're coming into race 4 of the 2019 season, and none of the big 3 or big 4, if you want to include, you could have switched out so many people last year as that number 4, but big 3, none of them have a win yet in 2019. So I think that, that could possibly change this weekend. The crazy part, though, is you've got both of those guys are over the $12,000 mark each, with Harvick almost at 1,300 or 13,000. So it's going to be hard to fit, both of those guys. I mean, if you put one, I don't know if you would, but if you put one lineup of Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick on one lineup, that leaves you only 6,200 left for four drivers. So that's just not going to work this weekend. So I am going to have exposure on both of them, but it's going to have to be a mix and match of other drivers in there. Also, too, Joey Logano coming off the win last weekend. Hard to not get some exposure on Logano with him starting 12th. But again, 10,300 for Logano. That's going to be hard to come by with everybody else that you're going to try to get in there as well. So, and you can't rule out Truex either. Truex is one of those guys that you always got to be cognizant of. That team, doesn't have a win here at Phoenix, but he is in JGR equipment this year, which is obviously an affiliation last year with Furniture Row Racing. So, but I don't know. I'm more leaning towards those place differential guys, and then honestly, just picking one of the top 10 guys and rolling with pretty much place differential everywhere else. It may come back to bite me, but I just think that's where it's at. And one guy that you didn't mention that I really do like a lot too, and that's Eric Jones. Eric Jones is starting from the top 10, so he's starting from the 10th position. But man, ever since he started racing here, he's basically got 1 top 5 and 3 top 10s. So I have a feeling that Eric Jones is going to be up in there at the end of the race. It's just going to be, again, a salary thing with him, because his salary went up a little bit and he's 8,600 this week. So, you're going to talk about, well, do I go Eric Jones or Clint Bowyer starting 26? I mean, a lot of people will probably end up going Clint Bowyer, which I would be too. But just don't overrule out Eric Jones and mixing him in there, because, he could easily get a top 3 finish this weekend and pay off for you there. So
yeah, I think you set me up well for the rest of the place differential guys, right? We've already talked about Larson starting 31st at 9,900. You just mentioned Bowyer starting 26th at 84. You've also got Suarez starting 28th at 7,600. Sticky Ricky is starting 19th and is 7,500. Newman starts 18th. He has amazing track history here and is 7,100. David Reagan's starting 29th and is 5,600. And Michael McDowell is 5,500 and starts 27th. Those are some juicy guys that you want for place differential. A lot of them, though, are in that price range where it's either or on a lot of these drivers. And that's before we talk about the tweeners again that I mentioned earlier, which is Almirola 15th, Jimmy 14th, and Kurt Busch starting 16th.
Yeah, for sure, brother. There's definitely a lot of juicy plays this weekend, and I think that's going to be the great equalizer this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Is I think there's not as much kind of parity or obvious plays this weekend, so I think that's going to make the field kind of more spread out than maybe what we had last weekend at Las Vegas. So, but yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty surprised so far how well Sticky Ricky's actually done this year in 2019. I'm actually really surprised.
Mm-hmm.
But he did have, the one poor race there at Atlanta. But, as far as, Daytona, that's anything could happen there. But, had a 13th place finish. And then last weekend, we talked about not starting from the 8th position, but he finished 6th. And he actually went down $300 in salary this week to $7,600, or $7,500. So he went down $400. Excuse me. So definitely somebody you may want to look at as a swerve play there.
The question I have for you and for everyone out there that I'm trying to figure out is, with the increase in horsepower that we're seeing this week, is that going to put Roush Fenway Racing back into their normal position? Because one thing that Roush Fenway struggled with was the high horsepower tracks, and basically they've been doing awesome since the more we've equalized the cars. Do you think that plays a factor this weekend?
Well, I mean, they're starting 18th and 19th, so it's kind of about where they should be, and I think they're both going to be guys that may get underlooked because you've got, those other guys starting from the latter part of the field. But you definitely got to have exposure on those team starters too. And those two guys right there, especially Ryan Newman, the guy's got unbelievable. This is one of his best tracks that we race on the circuit. He only won here a couple, short years ago. Now it was, kind of by fluke, but, it's one of those things where I think you do have to have exposure on both of those guys. And, you got to have exposure on the WWE Daniel Suarez as well. I mean, that's just a amazing starting spot for that car and that equipment, along with his teammate with Clint Boyer. So Suarez at 7,600, gives you a lot of options too, and doesn't break the bank to put him on your lineup. But one other person that you may want to think about is the guy that he actually slammed in that. And that was Michael McDowell. And the only reason I may end up fading Michael McDowell is because he may still have a permanent dent in his hood from Daniel Suarez's bike.
Well, they might have to hammer out the hood and get knocked back for adjustments. No, I think they'll be fine.
Before you get going on that, one thing that I did see that was very interesting is because of their starting position. So starting 27th and 28th in the pre-race activities, they both have to ride in the same truck together. How great is that?
That is great. But they did make up after the fight. They then talked it out and seemed to be fine. So it's just the way it went down. When everybody sits on pit road, it's going to be a cluster screw at the end to try to get everybody on track. They had 20-some cars with 3 minutes to go that hadn't qualified, and that's just problematic. NASCAR needs to do something about the time frame.
Well, I think they give it to them, and they give them the chance, they give them the opportunity to get out there, and nobody wants to go first because they want to see what they have to beat. But on top of that, it's like, okay, boys, there's all you guys go out at the same time. That it's just not going to work. So I think that what happened today and what transpired, I think a lot more of the crew chiefs are going to be like, okay, hey, I know there's 7 minutes or whatever left in the qualifying session, but we need to get out there and make sure that we get in clean air and that we can, run the qualifying lap that we'd like to run instead of, being a big cluster effort when they go out there.
Well, dude, I don't have a going to the garage pick, so instead of a going to the garage pick this week, I'm going to give a shout out to Quinn Hoff of Spire Motorsports making his debut at the Monster Energy Cup series. They're in the charter that used to be Furniture Row Racing's. I would love to see this equipment actually do something, but
Spire Motorsports.
Right. It's not going to be anything but a field filler in the back of the pack. So shout out to him for making his first Monster Energy Cup race, but I'm not going to play any Quinn Hoff this week. Are you?
No, definitely not. But, if we're right there, we kind of did skip over a little bit. But what about, the bottom dwellers, the 6K and under, or, 7,000 and under guys? Paul Menard's kind of interesting at 17. I think that's going to be a low-owned play. A lot of people will overlook that. And, it's not a huge salary saver. At 6,800, but I think that's going to help out in ownership. Chris Buescher, again, the guy paid off last weekend. Again, $6,600 for him, starting from the 22nd position. Maybe a little high, as far as that goes, but I still think that that's going to be a top 20 car. And then our boy, Matt DiBurrito, Levine Family Racing, starting from the 25th position at 6,200. He has slowly and surely come back down to reality after Daytona duels, because I don't know what happened there, but when he went off in the duels, like, I don't know, somebody at DraftKings was like, holy smokes, this guy's going to have a fantastic season. And they started him out at 7,600. Now he's come back to where he needs to be.
Yeah, no, I like the Menard play. The Buescher, the Priest, and the DiBenedetto play are problematic for me. That's why I left them off, because they're all starting right where they seem to finish. They're giving you no real push for place differential. That's why I'm kind of worried about those guys. I'm going to spin down and be in Reagan McDowell territory. That's just where I'm going to be for value this week. So,
you're not going to roll any your boy Ross Chastain back to back?
No. I mean, he's starting 33rd, and I like Chastain, but when you play those cars, you're banking on carnage, banking on
a mile track.
Right, and banking on them staying on the track, which is a lot to ask for, especially when they're all going west. Because keep in mind, the West Coast trip is hard on most of the established teams. It's really hard on the low-budget teams, and I think that's reflective in where they perform. So that's part of the reason why I stay off those drivers when we go west, is just I don't feel like with the equipment they have, I feel like it's even more of a disadvantage going out to the West Coast. With that said, I will let Liehr talk about last week's winner in the league. And once again, if you want to help support the show, it's rubbin'sracingdfs at Gmail. Feel free to chip us some money on PayPal. Liehr, go ahead and wrap stuff up for us.
All right, brother. Well, another fantastic week last week in the league. Thank you all for participating again. I think last week, let me take a look here, but best week so far as participants. We had 58 total, which was awesome and amazing. So keep it up. Love to have more competition in the league. But got to give it up to our boy, P. Daddis, on the victory last week at Las Vegas. He rolled the dice and, man, came out with some good results there. So, but as far as his team, he had Eric Amarola with a 59, which obviously we were on that play starting from the 25th position. He finished 7th. Chris Buescher, again, we talked about that one as well, scored 35 points, finishing 18th. Then Kurt Busch, starting 28th, finished 5th with a 73.75. And Brad Keselowski, with a 73.75, finishing 2nd after starting 19th. And then he had Corey LaJoie starting 30th, who I also really liked a lot last week as a cost saver driver there, with a 20. And then my burning rubber pick, MTJ, didn't quite finish where I was hoping he would with that start of 23rd position, but he did get a top 10, finishing 8th, and had 62.5 points for that total of 324 points.
Nice job last week. And guys, we saw it last year. You don't necessarily have to get in it early. You can get in it midway through the season and still dominate this contest. You're just at a little bit of a disadvantage. All it takes is going on a little bit of a heater, and you can take down and take over the leadership. So it's a lot of fun doing the league. It's free to do that league.
A lot of the players in our league are some of the best NASCAR DFS players out there.
Yep, I agree. Once again, thank you to Andy for totaling the results. That is a massive load off of our shoulders that we appreciate so much. And with that said, guys, we want to thank you as always for tuning in. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and if you're feeling up to it, donate now on PayPal. Well, not donate. Support the show on PayPal. And with that said, guys, thank you as always. Let's win some money this week. Liehr, say your goodbyes and let's get out of here.
All right, kids. Hope you guys have a fantastic weekend this weekend. Looking forward to it. I'm not going to be participating in any Xfinity tomorrow, which is a little disappointing, but Sometimes you got to have a break, but I'll be in Kansas City downtown supporting my alma mater, Northwest Missouri State, as they go for their basketball championship in the semifinal tomorrow. So I'll be there doing that, and then hitting up the auto show here in Kansas City. And then, as Poppa said, I'll be taking a bus and going to watch a concert tomorrow night. So it's going to be quite a fun-filled Saturday for me. So hopefully I won't be too hungover to make up some lineups on Sunday. But hope you guys have a fantastic weekend, and I cannot wait for Sunday at Phoenix. It should be a fun race to watch. So best of luck to y'all out there, and if I'm not winning and if Poppa's not winning any money, hope it's you guys.
Thanks as always, guys. Have a great weekend.